Welcome and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Jane Irrigation Training Series. I'm your host, Richard Restuccia, and today we're going to be talking about something that is more important, I think, than ever in the 20 plus years I've been in this industry, and that is what strategies do you use for your irrigation with such a short supply of water? And this is actually going to take a little bit of work over the winter season so that you're ready to know. So fortunately for us, Cory Broad, Territory Sales Manager for Jane, is with us today to teach us what we need to do to prepare so that we are ready for next season. And man, I know he and I both pray it rains a lot this winter, but if it doesn't, we better be ready. So those of you who have seen Cory present before, you know what an excellent teacher he is. He was the Madera Agriculturist of the Year a few years ago. He's got all the right certifications for irrigation, that's for sure, but he even takes it one step further. He's a certified crop advisor as well. And then what Cory really possesses that I think is so important for all of you and all of his customers that aren't on today is he's got a real passion for agriculture, doing it right, and irrigation. He really likes the technology around the irrigation as well. So we all get the benefit of that today. So Cory, thanks for joining. We really appreciate you being here today.
I appreciate it, Richard, and as always, the kind words. And we were talking about kind of what to continue to present on, and where's the discourse in the industry, and where are we? This presentation actually was created about a month ago. I had the opportunity to speak at the Crop Consultant Conference in Visalia, California, and working with the Certified Crop Advisors Board. They really wanted to talk about water and talk about kind of what we will be dealing with here as crop advisors and as growers, especially in California and in Central California. And they said, you're the right person to talk about irrigation strategy. And so that's really the foundation for what this talk is. And I think it's timely to your point that we're kind of at the end of the season, not that farming ever seems to stop, especially in California, but this is really a culmination of the end of the season. What does the horizon look like from a water scarcity standpoint? What's available technology and product wise? And what are 5 things that we can sit down and say, you know what, for water resiliency and planning going forward, what can I do on my farm? What can I do as a crop advisor? What can I do as an irrigation dealer to continue to add value? Because again, we're going to be under tremendous pressure, even if it rains the entire winter. We're just so far behind at this point. It's going to take everybody pitching in. So that's the foundation for this presentation. And I think as you and I talked, some of this stuff has been pulled from other presentations, but this is kind of a mass summary, if you will, of what we can do.
Yeah, I think something else that's really interesting, Cory, is this concept of strategy for irrigation. We haven't really talked about this much in the past 20 years. Now we've got researchers actually looking at things like, well, if we're going to underwater, when's the best time to do that? Because we're probably going to have to underwater. So that's what I think is so fascinating about the material that you bring today. So I'm really excited to get going on it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, you kind of did the introduction. So this slide is maybe obsolete, but yeah, I've had the opportunity to gain a number of skill sets throughout the years, especially while working at Jane Irrigation, and I'll always be appreciative of that. And I even threw the link up for my other presentation for some of our other trainings that you host every single week, and we appreciate the effort you put in on that, and make it easy for us as presenters to share our knowledge and experiences. So again, kind of the foundation of why we are where we are and why we're here today is, this graphic on the left-hand side is from 2021. And if you can imagine, the 2022 graphic would actually be even worse than this. And worse is relative, I suppose, but things are challenging right now. And California as a state, not just agriculture, but as a state, relies on 40% of its water supply to come from the ground. And with Sigma and some of these other things coming up, that's going to be a challenge. And they're working on well moratoriums and a number of different strategies to reduce water use as a state. And unfortunately, it's going to disproportionately impact agriculture. And so 2022 is worse than 2021. I put up 600,000 acres here being idle this year in California. It's probably somewhere closer to about 580,000 at this point, but in general discourse, it was about 600,000. And I talked about Sigma there a moment ago. We're going to be limiting groundwater restrictions. And I put up a couple of different numbers here of, 0.6 acre feet, 1.3 acre feet per acre. These are the things that we're going to see going forward. These are real numbers. This is what's going on in the local discourse. And it's going to impact, again, about 1 to 1.1 million acres permanently across the state. So these numbers need to become pretty familiar in our lingo. And these are the things that we need to think about, from crop planning to irrigation system design to your point earlier. What can we do to economically grow a crop, still have good agronomic principles, and still turn a profit at the end of the year by using less water? And these are all things that we're going to have to become really comfortable with.
Yeah, so Cory, I want to remind everybody the chat and the Q&A is open. And so if you have some questions or comments for Cory or myself, please put them in there and I'll interject them when appropriate. But first question already is this. So Sigma is already limiting the amount of water growers can use.
Yep, it depends on basically where you are. If you're inside an irrigation district, if you're in a white area, kind of what the plan is. They have GSAs, which is groundwater sustainability agencies. Generally, they are water districts or counties or areas that I'll say common interest, if you will. And they're having to come up with GSPs, which is a plan for groundwater sustainability long term. And the largest water district in the world, which is roughly 520,000 acres of cropland, is saying next year that it's going to be 1.3 acre feet per acre pumping cap. And so if you get additional surface water supplies, that will help. But the reality is you can't go out and turn on the pump as long as you want anymore.
Wow. So I think 1.3 acre feet is not much water.
Not in the grand scheme of things. I think when you look at cotton, corn, melons, tomatoes, that's about 2.5 acre feet per acre. You start thinking about kind of your tree crops, you're getting into that 3.5 to 4 acre feet per acre. So there's going to be some really challenging decisions that have already started being made by growers, because you have to start planning for that well in advance and contracts and things. But this is the kind of deer in the headlight moment for everyone.
Yeah, it's kind of spooking me today, that's for sure.
So Halloween's over, so we gotta keep moving. So what are we going to do to deal with it? I think that the first thing is partner with a professional. If I'm advising a grower, find a certified crop advisor, find somebody who is licensed by the Irrigation Association. If you're an irrigation dealer, be involved in the IEA, be licensed by the IEA, consider being involved with the certified crop advisors if it fits kind of what your business does. I think there's a lot of synergies there between the two associations. They have tons of knowledgeable professionals. I did kind of a quick web search just based on what I could find on the websites, but there's 87 certified crop advisors in California with water management expertise. I guess 86 others other than myself. And kind of narrowing it down to the Irrigation Association, there's 21 drip micro CIDs in California, and there's 58 certified ag irrigation specialists in California. And I can tell you that there's still a lot of other really knowledgeable professionals out there, but these are the people that have gone on and participated in certification, put in effort, put in time to continue to know practices. These people are probably pretty versed in Sigma, because again, they're spending time to learn the industry and kind of what's impacting it. Water proficiency is a must-have for growers and their advisors. And I think kind of working in the irrigation business and what I see, we tend to be more construction based in general, especially on the ag side. And so we tend to be a little less agronomic, where we would lend that to a pest control advisor or a certified crop advisor. I think that businesses have a unique opportunity of blending skill sets from both. I know we've done that here at Jane Irrigation with multiple certified crop advisors, where we're doing water management for customers now. Because we have this agronomic skill set, we have this background that gives us the opportunity to not only make great products, but now leverage that product in the field and use it to its fullest extent.
Yeah. So Cory, thank you for having this education and credential, because when I look at the numbers here and I just think of the Central Valley and how many growers are there, it's not very many. Then if you throw the Imperial Valley in and Salinas Valley and everything around Sacramento, I think, wow, there's some room here for some more people to get involved in this industry, because certainly we need the help.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm on the certification board now for the Irrigation Association, so you know that credentials are a passion of mine, and I encourage anybody who's interested, please reach out. We'd love to see more people show up at the IA show. Obviously, we'd love to network with you, and then also get you involved in licensing programs.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So the next step would be investing in irrigation. And I want to start with the irrigation system, which obviously as a manufacturer of major parts and components, near and dear to my heart. But the reality is we have to put in really good systems. And when I think about, again, certified crop advisors, I'm speaking to a diverse group normally, is they're helping growers invest each season because they're coming up with practices and compost, fertilizer recommendations, all these different like kind of long-term investment style purchases. Irrigation is the same thing. This is a 20, 25 year amortized investment, and it needs to be treated as such. And even starting with the simplest of the questions, is the irrigation system type right? I had fortunate enough to give a tour this morning around the Fresno State farm, and there's almond blocks with sprinklers. There's some with double line drip. There's some with both. There's some with none. It has to be the right fit for what you're growing and what you're doing. And again, as a drip and micro manufacturer, yeah, drip and micro sprinkler are probably the best option. But again, there is considerations for flood and furrow and sprinkler irrigation. That's the most important thing. And then obviously, again, as a manufacturer, are the products good? The system has to be right, but the products that support and build that system have to be good. Obviously, something that's near and dear to our hearts is our warranty. Our heavy wall emitter line and tubing have a 10-year warranty. Not many other people can touch that. And that, shows growers that, yes, you're making this major investment, and we're making it with you by backing our product. Another hot topic is energy, especially in California, as we kind of have these interesting initiatives as far as kind of what we're going to be doing for a power grid going forward. But Eric Olson gave a presentation last week talking about energy rates and how much they've changed in the last 15 years in California. And from an ag side, it's basically doubled. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, especially as California has a 2050 energy initiative, which isn't that far away. Just something to continue to consider. Fertigation, we're applying a mass amount of our fertility to our cropland via the irrigation system today. So just a tidbit from the ITRC is the uniformity of the fertilizer can't be greater than that of the irrigation system. So if you're spending time writing good recs as a certified crop advisor, and you're coming up with good fertility programs, and you're investing and spending money on calcium and nitrogen and all these things, and then you go and you put it on uniformly because you didn't invest in the irrigation system, you're hurting your initial investment and you're hurting your long-term investment. That's why it's so important.
Yeah, really great points.
So the second part of this is investing in technology. And I think this tracks really well with our company in that, since I've been here since 2015, we've invested in technology heavily. You've been a big part of that, Richard, in helping with the integration and also managing some of that. You have to get out there. You have to put technology in your field. There's good providers. Obviously, we're one of them. And the things that I think of from an ag side is soil moisture probes. You can get moisture, you can get EC, you can kind of track fertigation with that. They're reliable and they're inexpensive, all things considered. That leads me into automation. You can ask Jeff Toole, and what we're doing on the Jane Logic side of our business is it's obviously helping reduce labor. It's going to increase your efficiency around the farm and with your water use, because maybe it's not, hey, Richard, we have to run a 10-hour set today because my guy's got to go home at 5. Well, maybe I can have it turn off at 8 p.m. And maybe that was the right irrigation schedule, but I can now do that without having to worry about some of these other things. And talking to Jeff, I mean, our automation requests have tripled this year because, again, labor challenges, and then also the opportunity to use water more efficiently. Something that as a water manager that's important to me is the software. it's something that I interact with every day. I'm essentially a customer of Jane at this point because I'm using the products and I'm using the service to provide value to growers. And so the software has to be insightful, it has to be reliable, and it has to be easy to use. The Jane Logic C3 box that I have on the left-hand side, I mean, that could be tiger striped, pink and green. It probably doesn't matter because I'm not going to interact with it much. The reality is the software is something I use all the time. And I know we spent a ton of time and effort really developing software and giving good management insights. And then obviously something that's grown in scale big time in agriculture is imagery. Satellite imagery is low cost. The resolution and revisit rates is increasing with every satellite we send into the sky. And what I'll say on the imagery front to summarize that is there's no wrong answer except not implementing it. It's available and it fits all different economic models. You should be using it on your farm because we're having to do more with less. You're having to cover more acres, and we have to get some visibility on that.
Yeah, I love what you said, especially about the interface, right? Because it is the software; it's what you're working with, and is it easy to use? And I think maybe we're going to see some screenshots, but I love how easy it is to just look at my field every morning and say, underwater, overwater. What is the situation? I can get it visually when I'm having my first cup of coffee and know exactly what I have to do for that day.
I can generally make a week's worth of decisions in about 15 minutes. And that's with a pretty good in-depth look at it at 5:12 in the morning. So it doesn't take a ton of, I'll say, brain power and concentration because the system gets set up right. And then it's just giving you this information. It's giving you recommendations, and then you can easily implement it. So kind of, again, just touching on satellite imagery and water use. From our end, it kind of gives us that opportunity to really build confidence when we're doing water budgeting, because we're doing this imagery in conjunction with weather data, crop functions, and really gives you a field specific management view of what's going on. Each week you're getting a calculation and an image, and it's showing you literally how much water your field is using, kind of is what the graphic on the left-hand side is showing. And then obviously in imagery standpoint, we're adding more value by giving NDVI. So we're giving you ETC mapping, water use mapping, and uniformity. And then we're also giving you what's the health of that crop. What's the reflectance of that crop, which is a standardized measurement across all of the industry to know that, yes, this crop is performing well, or no, I have a problem. What is it? I don't know, but instead of walking all of this 540 acres, maybe I can go drive to an area pretty quick and understand. So just felt like it was really important to kind of hammer back on that again. And this imagery package from us is included with Jane Logic. But if you just wanted to do the imagery on a standalone, it's $4 per acre. No hardware in your field. We call it Jane Logic sensorless, pretty creative. But again, it's readily available off the shelf products that can make a difference.
Yeah, $4. I mean, what that seems like nothing, especially when I figure out the value of my field.
Or water.
This is really inexpensive insurance.
100%. Yeah. So we've talked about partnering with the right people. We've put in a good system. Now we have to start working on the planning part of it, which is really, in my mind, water budgeting. I think if you look at each month throughout a growing season, especially if you're used to growing a particular commodity or crop, you're going to have a pretty good idea of what to expect throughout given weeks. Obviously, weather and climate are two different things, and there's going to be seasonality and there's going to be some changes. But the reality is very rarely has it not been hot in July in Fresno in my life. So I have a pretty good idea that it's could be 95, could be 100, and it could be 105. And so I know that. And so I plan around that accordingly. And it's no different when irrigating. So kind of, again, sitting down and budgeting out for the season, I'm going to need roughly this many inches of water, plus 10% and minus 10%. And then you can kind of build a cropping map from there. Something that's popped up more and more in discourse is delaying spring irrigation events. Obviously, I'm talking about almonds, walnuts, pistachios, things that are more fixed. Obviously, when you plant cotton or you plant corn, you're planting to moisture and you're just at the mercy of what that weather is at that time. It's a little different setup, but again, we have 2 million acres of permanent crops just on the tree side in California, or I should say tree nut side. So the impact is massive to get that right. I think I look back at last year being a really dry year from a water perspective. In our winter and spring, we still saw 6 inches of rainfall in a pretty condensed period in the Central Valley. And so I think if you can kind of start to understand your soil's texture and structure, you can kind of expand this budget and really focus on saving water, because you kind of know the water's there, and then you know how much you're going to use. And then you can really say, you know what, Richard, on this day is probably when we're going to start irrigating. And so I think you kind of now take the soil characteristics and field characteristics into play. And so you can really understand how much of that water is accessible to you and your crop. So again, what's your soil type? What are their constituents that are in there? I just threw some things out: sodium, boron, compaction, things that can affect osmotic potential, water availability, et cetera. Knowing the rooting depth of your crop, especially with trees. You can see third leaf pistachios on the left-hand side here. They were different the year before, and then they were different in year 4, and then in year 5, and in year 6. So you have to understand what area does my crop have access to? How big is the trough, if you will? That way I can determine how much water is available. Of course, having a soil moisture probe, it can really help you kind of start to estimate and calculate plant available water, and then maybe even delay those spring irrigation events.
Yeah, so Cory, a couple of questions coming in. The first one I'm seeing here, knowing your root depth of your crop. If you don't know, where can you find that information?
With a backhoe and in your field. I think that's step one. I mean, I had lunch with a grower yesterday that we work with on about 4,000 acres of pistachios, and there's no substitute for your shadow in a field. But the reality is probe data is super helpful. There's obviously going to be research from, in our case, like the UC extension system that's going to help you. But actually going out, and we dig backhoe pits on the ranches every year to say, okay, here's how far out they are, here's how deep it is, here's what the tree has access to, and then we can build, again, a plan around that. We're just dialing it in further every year on how tight we can manage that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Then the next question coming in is this: do you address the crop cover practice for irrigation?
I don't really have that in here. I think we're talking about cover crops, and it's something that we're paying attention to. The biggest challenge becomes with cover cropping, and first off, I should say, it's great to see that the practice is increasing and that there's more discourse around it. Traditionally, people were under the belief that putting a cover crop in takes away nutrients, it takes away water. We're already paying for nutrients. We're already challenged by water. Why would I add to that? I'm not saying that those things don't happen. I'm saying that there's other maybe existential benefits that we're starting to realize. And I see the practice increasing, and I see people being rewarded for doing it, both agronomically, but also economically. It's not something that I really go into today. And the biggest challenge is if you have a double line drip system in, say, an almond orchard, which is, I don't know, I'll say 1 million of the 1.5 million acres. How do I irrigate that crop? Well, I need to have another system for it. And I think that maybe we can almost roll all the way back to the first slide, Richard, which is, what's your system type? Should you consider that before planting the orchard? Or can you add that system later? Or should the system be big enough to handle it? That's, again, partner with professionals and then invest in the system that you know you're going to use. Unfortunately, if you have a 10-year-old almond orchard on double line drip, yeah, you can probably do it, but there's going to be some probably pretty heavy challenges versus if I come in today and plant a new orchard, maybe I put in a solid set sprinkler system using a Jane mini revolver where I'm getting 85% coverage, and I can grow a relatively healthy cover crop. Right now, most growers are just trying to plant to moisture and then basically terminating that crop or putting it back into the soil profile in March. I see an increased opportunity there for sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Again, kind of staying on the soil side of things. I mean, just kind of walking through an example. If I look at like Western Fresno County, we tend to have heavier soils, so clays, loams, so on and so forth. Just kind of shooting down the middle. If I say that based on a soil chart that I have 1.5 inches of available water holding capacity, so it can hold 1.5 inches of water per foot of soil, and I have a 3-foot root zone and it rained just over 6 inches, is that water plant available? Obviously, having a probe will help you with that. But you could start using some calculations to understand that I have 4.5 inches of plant available water because it's 3 foot deep times 1.5 inches per foot. And now all of a sudden I can say that's what's in my piggy bank to start the year. I'm not starting the year with an empty one. Now I'm going to use that water. And I'm talking about in the circumstances we're in where, hey, I'm not going to get any surface water this year. If I have to go to the open market, water is $1,000 to $2,000 per acre foot. You're talking about if you had to irrigate almonds on open ground water, you're talking about $4,000 to $8,000 an acre just in securing the water, not even applying it. That's just not sustainable at all in any model. So this is really extrapolating, calculating, and then implementing some pretty unique ideas. So again, this process right now is, as I'm describing it, is kind of done with some generalizations and publicly available information, which these charts I got from different soil websites or UC, a soil test. That's why it's in bold. It's going to be the best method for dialing in this process. They can help you understand based on not just texture, but structure and constituents, what your soil can do for you. But ask not what you can do for your soil, but what it can do for you. I think if you get that information, it's really rewarding.
So thank you, Cory. We have another question coming in too. And this question is, does Jane provide water management for small irrigation districts regarding the delaying of the spring irrigation start date from the reservoir?
Yeah, I think that there's a discussion to be had. I mean, obviously, I don't know, maybe I toss it back to you, Richard, with kind of what we're doing on the ag tech side. I know Eric Olson's going to be giving a presentation on Friday that's pretty exciting about how ag tech just got a lot better. So I don't want to maybe let the cat too far out of the bag. I'll turn that to you, but we are getting to district level monitoring.
Yeah, I agree. And I would definitely say tune in Friday for and it's just not a convenient teaser. We've got a big announcement coming Friday. It'll be really interesting to see what we're adding to our ag tech that is going to actually make this very easy for us to do.
Everything from right at that spot on a farm to actually being able to work with irrigation districts en masse. So I'll leave it at that.
Right. Okay. No spoiler alert. Yeah, needed, right?
So kind of just following through this example, again, when I gave this talk, it was in Visalia, California, and I pulled some UC. These are crop water use numbers by date periods for almonds, walnuts, and pistachios, which are kind of the letter designations. And so if I look at the beginning of the season, that springtime, April 1 to May 15th in Visalia, almonds are expected full mature 5.72 inches, walnuts 5.8, almost right there. But pistachios are about half that because they leaf out later. Again, did it rain 6 inches or more in the winter and spring? Did your soil hold that water? Is it actually available? If you can start answering these questions, I think you see where I'm going. Did I need to irrigate when I did? Or did I just do it because, well, that's when my neighbor does it, or that's when I've always done it, or that's the safe thing to do? Unfortunately, those questions or answers to those questions are becoming more and more expensive every day. So getting this right is well worth the time. Just showing people this is a soil moisture probe in Western Fresno County. This was one of our rain events during December. I mean, water got down, there was a moisture increase down to 20 inches. So if you can start learning that and quantifying that and then calculating it and using it, I know that water's getting down almost 2 feet on a single rain event, which again, we only had 6 inches of rain total.
So Cory, I've seen these charts a lot, but I'm still unclear of how you know it got down 20 inches.
For sure. So that's the circle was part of it, right, to help. But each of these different lines, kind of starting with the red line, if you will, that's a 4-inch depth sensor, an 8-inch, a 12-inch, so every 4 inches, all the way down. This screen is showing to 36 inches, and you can see that the chart kind of spike up. You can see kind of these increases here, especially this sharp increase. that tells me that water is cascading through the profile. It's working its way down through because the moisture unit levels at these depths are increasing. Therefore, the moisture is increasing in the soil around that probe area. So again, as a water manager, we're happy to help you with that. But if you have the technology, we can also kind of be in the background in helping calculate this.
Yeah. And so I can see this on any, internet connected computer, and I don't have to go out there with the backhoe and dig to see it's there for me. It's my real opportunity to see what's under the soil line.
I look at it from my phone, and that phone could be in the car, hopefully not driving, could be on the golf course, could be in your office, could be anywhere. It really gives you an opportunity to be there without being there. And again, hopefully give you some comfortability in what's going on.
Yeah. Wow. That's really helpful.
Talking about delaying spring irrigation events, this is a pistachio orchard that I've helped manage, and it doesn't really have the chronology built into it. But if you take the left-hand side of this chart, that would be January 1. And where you see these spikes start up right here, these are irrigation events. That was May 9th is when we started irrigating. I knew that we had enough water in the soil profile based on having all of this data and information from soil tests and probes. I knew or had some demand budgeting already done. And I said, we don't need to run the irrigation system until May. And they said, how do you know that? And then I presented the information and they said, yeah, that's huge. Because if we would have gone back and followed I need to put on 3.6 inches worth of water, well, I didn't have 3.6 inches of water. I would have had to have gone and bought it. So that's a major, major dollar savings 2 months into the season.
Yeah, that's really significant. And I think too, like you say, the tendency or the desire is going to want to be to put a lot of water down right in the beginning, April.
And I'm not saying that people are wrong. I grew up that way. You walk out and you turn the switch and you press the button and the pump turns on and water comes out. We just can't do it anymore. And that's what we're faced with. And it takes all of these ideas and concepts to start working towards what the future is going to look like.
Well, and to have the peace of mind actually using the technology and saying, okay, I know this for sure.
Yep.
Instead of I have a feeling.
Trust and verify, and verify. And so obviously one of the latter parts of this is just going to be irrigation scheduling, because we've figured out what our demand is. Our system's running great. We have all the right people in the right places. And we're calculating it to the nth degree. But then if you don't go put it into practice, all of that is for naught. I put this in bold at the top because it's something that I've been thinking about more and more recently. And it's that my opinion is that more water is wasted, and I use that in quotations, via poor irrigation scheduling than really due to a lack of maintenance. That doesn't mean you can't not maintain your system, because really in the long run, you cannot have efficient irrigation event or application without good maintenance. But we've talked about water use. If I need to put on 2 inches of water to these trees, should I do it all in one shot? Should I do it in 4? Should I do it in 20? I don't know. But that's part of understanding the schedule and understanding what your soil can take, what your system can put out, how much is available to your crop. You're really trying to answer how much water and how often to apply it. And then go ahead.
So this question of a poor irrigation schedule, how do you define that?
Not using water as efficiently as possible. I think, again, it sounds silly, but if I know that I need to put on 2 inches this week, and let's just say that converts to 48 hours of runtime. Most systems, even if they're low flow systems, I shouldn't put on 48 hours in a row. I shouldn't turn it on Monday morning and turn it off Wednesday morning. That's probably not the answer. Also, if I tell you, Richard, hey, I need you to go irrigate for 2 hours at a time, and I need you to do it 24 times that week, you're probably going to fire me as a water manager pretty quickly.
Right.
So go into the how much can I apply? That's labor, that's energy, your system capacity, your water scarcity. that's going to start defining it. The how much should I apply finishes that off, because there's the crop demand side, which we in this case said was 2 inches, but soil capacity. If you go put on 2 inches and a half an inch of it runs off, that's not a really good irrigation event, is it?
Right.
So what's that soil capacity? What's the environmental impact? Maybe it all goes into the soil, but only half of it stays in the root zone. Then what? There's these things that come in. And so again, as a water manager, I'm using this technology the same way that I'm asking my growers to use it, to understand very quickly how to make these decisions. And again, the answer is generally probably somewhere in the middle where, yeah, maybe a 24-hour set is okay, or maybe it is 4 12-hour sets. It just depends on your unique situation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great.
So just again, kind of an example of roadmap, because I usually speak to a pretty diverse audience, but a common application rate for micro and drip systems are going to be 0.03 to 0.05 inches per hour. And a fun trick, if you take your gallons per minute applied divided by your acres, and then you divide that by a constant of 452.6, you will find out inches per hour. So when we talked about 48 hours being 2 inches, you can, again, if I take 400 gallons a minute on a 40-acre system, that's 10 gallons per minute per acre. I divide it by 452.6. Now I know my gross application rate.
Yeah.
It doesn't factor in DU, but again, probably allows you to get started pretty quickly. So an example of this, if I have a 6-leaf pistachio orchard, so it's getting to maturity, but it's not all the way there. And just say during a particular time period, I'm using 0.6 inches per week. The clay loam soil, it's 4 sets, and I know my application rate's 0.035, kind of went somewhere in the middle there. Means I need 18 hours per week of irrigation application. So to the point earlier, Richard, you probably don't want to be irrigating every single day because you're limited on labor and you have all these other things you have to do as a farmer. Our strategy might be, let's irrigate 36-hour sets because it's clay loam soil and I know that it can hold it because I've done all this testing and I understand that. And I'm going to run 36-hour sets times 4 for 6 days straight. And then I'm going to turn it off on that Sunday. And then I'm off for the next 8 days so that I have 8 days to prune and spray and do all the things that I need to do. And not give my guys overtime and all this other stuff and chase water around. This is an example of a real life scenario that we used this year working with a grower to use water as efficiently, but also as labor.
Right. So this helps us understand, right, that if we have to put down, for the sake of easy math, an inch a week, do I do it all in one shot? Do I do it in 2 shots of a ½ inch or 3 shots of a third of an inch? These are all the factors that play into it then.
Yep. I mean, I have another field that I manage that's a fine sandy loam. It's not a clay. It's actually a lower application rate than the 0.035. And before using some other products that we'll talk about here in a moment, I couldn't irrigate 24 hours straight because the water would go below 4 foot. It just fell through the soil profile. That was a challenge. So it was irrigating because, again, of hours and labor, we were irrigating 12-hour sets and we were irrigating 4 times a week. So that's 4 times going to the field, turning it on, 4 times turning it off, 4 times checking for leaks. We use some other products and we changed that. So we'll kind of get into that in a moment.
So Cory, have you seen any ag soil tests that actually show you percolation rates of the soil?
There's different testing facilities that can help with that. I'm not necessarily familiar with them just because, again, there's quite a few soil labs around here, but most of it I could say you could understand pretty quickly because, again, most growers probably have an irrigation system on a similar soil type or even right next to it.
Right.
So they can maybe blend off of some experience, but labs do a good job of telling you the soil structure, telling you the soil texture, and giving you insights into permeability as well.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks.
So I told you maintenance can help you and it's important. And I've given whole webinars on this. I will be brief, but the point is every field requires different flushing protocols, but they all require care. Flushing comes down to frequency, velocity, and duration. I want 1.5 to 2 feet per second of velocity coming out of the end of the hose. Really few irrigation systems are designed with that actually in mind. So probably something to bring up when you're partnering with the right people and investing in irrigation is, hey, when I go to flush this or I go to maintain it, how hard is it? If I made you pull the engine every time you wanted your oil changed in your car, that probably wouldn't sell very many models. That's literally as easy as it needs to be. Just, again, food for thought. If you have an 1/8 mile run, which is pretty standard on a double line drip system for in an orchard, 18 millimeter tubing, you need 25 pounds of pressure at the head end of that in order to get your 1.5 feet per second. Again, if you have a 1/4 mile tape run on 7/8 tape, you're going to need 13 pounds of pressure. If you can't get that volume of water and that pressure, it probably wasn't designed right, and something that needs to be looked at going forward. Duration plays off of velocity. The faster you flush the water out of the end of the hose, the less time you have to do it. So if you have a 660-foot run and it's 1.5 feet per second, my Fresno State math tells me that's 7.3 minutes to flush that line. Nobody I talk to usually flushes it that long because they're like, oh, it makes a mess or it ran clear. Well, rule of thumb is that 60% of your debris is in the first 40% of your line. So if you only evacuate half the line, you essentially just moved 60% of your debris to the far end of your line and left room for more stuff to stack up front. You might have actually made it worse, believe it or not. Even at the correct velocity, if not enough time is given, you're just not getting the stuff out. So make sure you get the velocity right and then do it for the right amount of time. It'd be like brushing your teeth and doing it for 5 seconds. Well, yeah, probably some good was done, but probably didn't help you either when you go back to the dentist.
Yeah, this is a really good point. And so really do the math is the answer, because no matter how long, this is what I take away, no matter how long I am flushing my system, it is not long enough.
It never will be. And then of course the next one is frequency. Well, how often do I flush? But I think it's like anything else. If you do a really, really good job all the time, every time, you may actually be able to do it less often. I'd say that again, it depends on the emission device type, your water quality, the economics of it, because if it's tape that I'm going to be disposing of at the end of the season, and I go out there and it costs me this much to flush it one last time, maybe it's not worth doing, maybe it is. But at the beginning of the season, that number is probably a lot different, right? Because I have a lot more to lose or a lot more risk. So you got to think about all those things. I'd say that most orchard micro irrigation systems need to be flushed at least every other month. Systems that receive surface water need to be flushed monthly at a minimum. I have one particular field that I manage that even though it has no district water, it's just well water, we flush that field every month. We just have to. And so you learn and dissect, diagnose, and then implement. Water treatment, it's important, really can play a large role in flushing protocols. If you stop the growth or accumulation of material in the system, continuous treatment can maybe delay or prolong these flushing events. So you still have to do it for the right amount of time at the right velocity. But hey, Richard, instead of flushing 6 times this year, you need to flush 3. Well, what's the cost of that chemical? And then what's the cost of hiring me and labor guys to go do it? The chemical usually wins out because, again, labor's not getting any cheaper. So just food for thought on that side. And then surfactants, I kind of alluded to that earlier. Something that's fairly new to Jane is that we partnered with Precision Laboratories, and we're promoting and marketing irrigation surfactants. And I think, treating your water and your irrigation system shouldn't just be on the maintenance side. We've talked about that increased value, pressure on our water system. We need to make sure that every drop gets used to the biggest benefit we can. Adding surfactants is kind of no different than adding them to your spray tank. You're spending all this money on chemical or on fertilizer, and you're adding in adjuvants to promote or increase the efficacy of those products. It's the same thing with using a surfactant. We've found a ton of success using really 4 products that we're carrying. It's not overly diverse or complicated. In our water management services program, from one of my biggest experiences was I applied a product called Stretta, which basically increases water holding potential of soil. And my experiences was it cut my infiltration rate in half. And so I could go from running 12-hour sets to 24-hour sets. So I went from running 4 days a week on average to running 2 days a week on average. And a majority of my fertilizer, my water landed in that 28-inch zone. Obviously, I could push it deeper if I wanted to, but the reality is my fertility program increased, our water use efficiency increased, and then I saved money on labor because I wasn't sending somebody out there 2 extra times every single week. So big difference for us.
Yeah, that's huge.
So this is the summary slide. I won't beat this one to death. I know we went a little bit long, but again, partner with the right people, invest in your irrigation system, create a water budget for each of your fields, and then work on a soil water budget. So we know what the crop's going to use. Now it's how can we use it and apply it to the soil profile area, because that's really you're irrigating the soil. And then improve your irrigation maintenance and scheduling. You have to do it. You talk about all the things I learn and I do. I put these in. These are snippets from some of the publications that I read regularly in the commodity magazines. And maintenance is key to success. Information resources to make a plan for next year. What's the role of technology in your future orchard? When to begin your first irrigation? How can it impact yields? How do you calculate net crop ET? These are all things that are out there. These are all discourses that are being had. I just summarized it, hopefully all into one platform for everybody.
Cory, this was fantastic. I learned so much today. I really appreciate it. This was, you said you went long. It didn't seem like it because we were getting solid, valuable information. So thanks very much for doing that. I certainly appreciate it. I know all the viewers do too. I want to thank all the viewers for joining us again today. I know how busy everybody is right now, so we really appreciate that you take some of your day and spend it with us. Hopefully we're hitting the mark on the education. I know Cory did it today, that's for sure. Remember, all of our 200+ trainings are available to you for free at janesusa.com/trainings. You can find us there, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I love it that people are out there working and listening to the podcast. Cory, you had a comment on that.
Yeah, I had one more for you. It is November, and for those of you who need CEUs for Irrigation Association credentials, we do have trainings online that do cover that and are pre-approved by the IA. I actually am happy to tell you that I've submitted all of my hours in for my period. And so I'm done now, but I encourage everybody, as it is November and it's fast approaching, so you can get some of those hours on our website as well.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Cory. Thank you, because it's almost the end of the year. So yeah, you don't have to be panicked. We have plenty of time to catch up. So, okay. Well, listen, thank you, everybody. Remember, we're back on Friday at noon to talk about new ag tech acquisition that Jane has made. It's going to be very exciting, very interesting for all of you. So hopefully we'll see you back then. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.